like a beautiful prison. Yuna stood at the edge of the Valentine's Day charity gala, champagne flute untouched in her hand, watching the man who was technically her husband work the room like he owned it, which, given Han Jiwoo's net worth, he practically did. 1 month and 2 days. That's how long she'd been Mrs. Han. 1 month and 2 days of living like expensive ghosts in the same penthouse, communicating through color-coded sticky notes on a refrigerator stocked with food they never ate together. The ballroom glittered around her. Crystal chandeliers, red roses climbing marble columns, souls elite in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. She should feel like Cinderella at the ball. Instead, she felt like Cinderella's stand-in, hired for the night and forgotten by dawn. "Why are you here?" Jiwoo had asked earlier, his voice as cold as the ice sculpture melting near the champagne fountain. "This is a business event. Not, 'You look beautiful,' or 'I'm glad you came,' or even a simple hello. Just confusion at her presence, as if she were a stranger who'd wandered in off the street rather than the woman wearing his grandmother's ring. $500,000, Yuna reminded herself. That's what this year of loneliness cost. That's what she'd agreed to when she signed that contract 6 weeks ago, sitting across from Jiwoo's lawyer while he examined his phone like she didn't exist. Separate bedrooms, no physical contact beyond required public appearances, absolutely no emotional attachment. She was Kang Yuna, professional wife. She'd built a business out of fake relationships, teaching awkward men how to date, posing as girlfriends at family reunions, playing the devoted partner at corporate events. She had rules. She had boundaries. She had a strict policy about feelings ever since her ex left her for an actual mail-order bride, which still felt like the universe's cruelest joke. This contract should have been easy, the easiest money she'd ever made. So why did her chest ache every morning when she found Jiwoo's note? "Left early, don't wait up," next to the coffee maker. "Mrs. Han?" The voice was warm, accented, and entirely unexpected. Yuna turned. The man standing before her looked like he'd stepped out of a Mediterranean travel ad, olive-tan skin, perfectly styled dark hair with a slight wave, and eyes that were some impossible shade between hazel and green. His smile could have powered the entire ballroom. "I apologize for the intrusion," he said, that accent, Italian, making even the apology sound romantic. "But I've been watching you all evening, and I simply cannot stay silent any longer." Yuna's publicist's smile activated automatically. "I'm flattered, but Marco Valentino." He didn't offer his hand, just pressed his own to his heart like he was pledging allegiance. "My family is here for business negotiations with your husband's company. The merger, you understand." She didn't, actually. Jiwoo told her nothing about his business, but she nodded anyway. Marco's smile softened into something almost sad. "Mrs. Han, I have a confession." He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne and what might have been fresh bread. "I've been watching you all evening, and I must know, does your husband realize he's married to sunshine itself?" Yuna's breath caught. Across the room, Jiwoo laughed at something a board member said, his face briefly animated before settling back into its usual ice. He hadn't looked at her once all night. "Because if I had a wife like you," Marco continued, his voice dropping to something reverent, "I would not be able to look away, not for a single moment. I would know that I held the sun in my hands." Before Yuna could respond, before she could even process what was happening, Marco bowed slightly and walked away, leaving her standing there with a racing heart and 1,000 questions. "Where are you watching from? Hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens next will make you scream." This Valentine's gala is about to become a disaster neither Yuna nor her ice-cold husband saw coming. 6 weeks earlier, "You're actually considering this?" Mina's voice cut through Yuna's concentration as she reviewed the contract for the third time. Her best friend and business partner stood in the doorway of their boutique office, arms crossed, wearing the red blazer that meant she was about to deliver hard truths. "Rent a spouse," was spelled out in elegant letters on the glass door behind her. Yuna's baby, her proof that she could turn heartbreak into profit, that she could make a business out of what most people gave away for free and regretted later. "It's just another contract," Yuna said, but even she didn't believe it. "For an entire year, Yuna, living with him, pretending to be his wife. That's literally what we do here. For a weekend." Maybe a month tops. Not 12 months with the Ice King of Seoul. Mina snatched the contract from Yuna's hands. Do you know what they say about him? Han Jiwoo once fired an assistant for bringing him coffee that was zero point 0.5 degrees too warm. 0.5 degrees, Yuna. The man uses a thermometer on beverages. Yuna had heard the stories. Everyone had. Han Jiwoo, who inherited his father's tech empire at 27 and tripled its value in 5 years through sheer ruthless brilliance. Who lived in a penthouse that looked like a museum. Who collected vintage fountain pens worth more than most people's cars and had never been photographed smiling. $500,000, Yuna said quietly. Mina's expression softened. I know the business needs capital, but this feels different, dangerous. I've handled worse? But had she? After Minwoo left her for someone he literally ordered online, the irony still made her want to laugh and cry. Yuna had promised herself never again. No real feelings, no vulnerability, just contracts, clear terms, and money in the bank. This should have been perfect. The contract meeting happened in a conference room so minimalist it felt aggressive. Jiwoo sat at the head of a table that could seat 20, his lawyer beside him, presenting terms like she was a corporate acquisition rather than a human being. Jiwoo himself barely looked up from his phone. Separate bedrooms, the lawyer droned. No physical contact beyond what's required at public events. No emotional involvement of any kind. The marriage will last precisely 1 year, at which point you'll divorce quietly. Payment of $500,000 upon completion of the contract term. Why? Yuna asked. Both men looked surprised that she'd spoken. Why do you need a wife? The lawyer glanced at Jiwoo, who finally set down his phone. His eyes were dark, intense, and completely unreadable. My grandmother's will stipulates I must be married for 1 year to inherit her 40% stake in Han Industries. If I don't, it goes to my cousin Tae-jun, who once proposed turning our headquarters into a K-pop training facility. His voice was flat, emotionless. This is a business necessity, Miss Kang, nothing more. And you chose my agency because? Your reputation for discretion and professionalism. You understand contracts. You won't develop inconvenient expectations. Something about the way he said inconvenient expectations, like feelings were a software bug, made Yuna's decision. I'll do it. She signed. He signed. They shook hands like strangers closing a real estate deal. That was 6 weeks ago. The penthouse was beautiful and cold, just like its owner. Yuna got the guest wing, a bedroom larger than her entire apartment, with an ensuite bathroom and a walk-in closet. Jiwoo's assistant had stocked with designer clothes in her exact size. Thoughtful, except Jiwoo hadn't chosen them himself. They communicated in sticky notes. Working late. Don't wait up. Breakfast in fridge if you want it. Board meeting tomorrow. Need you there by 6. That's PM, right? AM. Wear something conservative. She saw him maybe twice a week, usually from behind, his back disappearing into his study, his silhouette leaving at dawn. Once, she'd stayed up late reading in the living room and heard him come home at 2 a.m. He'd walked right past her without noticing, went straight to his fountain pen collection, and stood there for 20 minutes just looking at them. That's when she realized those pens were the only things Han Jiwoo actually loved. Mina called every other day. How's married life? Exactly like being single, but in a nicer apartment. Has he even spoken to you? Does the dry cleaning is ready count? Yuna, I'm fine, really. This is perfect. No mess, no feelings, just business. But late at night, when the penthouse was dark and silent, when she could hear the city breathing outside and Jiwoo locked away in his study, Yuna wondered if $500,000 was enough payment for feeling invisible. She'd survived heartbreak before. She'd built a business on understanding that romance was just another transaction, feelings just another commodity to be packaged and sold. So why did this particular transaction feel like it was costing her something no contract could name? Yuna had attended exactly 0 business meetings in her month as Mrs. Han. So when Jiwoo's assistant called at 7 a.m. with urgent instructions to dress professionally and arrive by 9, she knew something had shifted. The Han Industries building was all glass and steel, reaching toward the sky like it was trying to escape the earth entirely. Jiwoo's office occupied the entire top floor, minimalist furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul, and a conference table that looked like it cost more than a luxury car. Just sit there and look supportive, Jiwoo had instructed in the elevator, the longest sentence he'd spoken to her in weeks. This merger is critical. $2 billion. Don't speak unless spoken to. Got it. Be a pretty decoration. His jaw tightened. The only indication he'd heard her. The Valentinos arrived like they were filming a cologne commercial. Don Valentino was distinguished and silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Yuna's car. But it was his son who made the room temperature change. Marco Valentino walked in, and the world seemed to tilt slightly on its axis. He was objectively handsome. Olive skin, perfectly styled dark hair, a smile that belonged in a toothpaste ad. But it wasn't his looks that made Yuna blink. It was the way he stopped dead in his tracks when he saw her, like he'd walked into a wall made of invisible feelings. Ah, Marco breathed, and even that single syllable sounded romantic with his Italian accent. You must be Mrs. Han. Yuna stood to shake his hand professionally. His grip was warm, gentle, and lasted exactly 2 seconds too long. Marco Valentino? He said, still holding her hand, still staring at her like she'd personally invented color. And I must tell you, Mrs. Han, that you have a smile that could end wars and also start them. I think about it, and my heart, he pressed his free hand to his chest, it goes boom boom like my nana's meatballs hitting the pan. Someone coughed. Yuna was fairly certain it was her own trapped laugh trying to escape. Mr. Valentino? Jiwoo's voice could have frozen fire. Perhaps we should begin the presentation? But Marco was undeterred. He finally released Yuna's hand, only to pull out her chair himself, ignoring the fact that she'd already been sitting. Please allow me. A woman like you should never have to do anything for herself. I'm perfectly capable of. Of course you are. You are capable of everything. I can see this in your eyes. You have eyes like, he gestured dramatically, like warm honey that could heal a wounded soul. Across the table, Jiwoo's fountain pen snapped in half. The meeting should have been straightforward. Don Valentino's hospitality empire wanted to partner with Han Industries' technology division, smart hotels, automated restaurants, the future of luxury travel. The numbers were solid. The projections were excellent. But Marco kept looking at Yuna. As you can see in slide 7, Jiwoo said, his voice tight, the projected ROI. Mrs. Han, Marco interrupted, do you like tiramisu? The boardroom went silent. I'm sorry? Yuna managed. Tiramisu, it is my specialty. I make it from my nana's recipe. The secret is in the espresso. You must use only the best, and you must sing to it while you prepare. Would you like me to make some for you? Mr. Valentino? Jiwoo's voice was ice wrapped in frost wrapped in a blizzard. We are in the middle of a business meeting. Yes, I understand. Marco stood suddenly, and everyone tensed like he might do something wild, which apparently he was about to. But I must speak truth. I cannot sit here and pretend. Don Valentino closed his eyes like he'd seen this movie before and knew how it ended. Marco walked around the table, past lawyers, past board members, past his own father, until he stood directly in front of Jiwoo. Mr. Han, Marco said, formal but passionate, I want your wife to be my Valentine. Someone dropped their tablet. Someone else gasped. Yuna inhaled her water and started choking. The room erupted in whispers, but Marco continued, louder now, making sure everyone heard. I know you had her first, but did you choose her? Did you wake up and say, this woman, she is my destiny? Because I did, this morning, after I saw her photograph in the business briefing packet. Jiwoo's eye was twitching, actually twitching. Yuna had seen him negotiate billion-dollar deals, fire executives, and stare down hostile board members without so much as blinking, but right now his left eye was doing a dance. You're married to the sun? Marco continued, warming to his theme, but you keep her in the dark. This is a crime against love itself. Mr. Valentino, Jiwoo stood slowly, and Yuna recognized the controlled fury of a man who'd spent years perfecting emotional suppression. My wife and I. Are you happy? Marco turned to Yuna suddenly. Do you wake up and feel love? Do you feel cherished? Because you should. A woman like you should feel these things every moment. Don Valentino finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd probably built his fortune on knowing exactly when to intervene. My son speaks from the heart. We Valentinos respect all love. We do not force Marco to deny his feelings. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Lawyers stood. Board members whispered frantically. Someone mentioned calling security. Jiwoo grabbed Yuna's arm, the first time he'd touched her in 6 weeks, and pulled her into his private office. You need to fix this. His voice was shaking, actually shaking. Tell him you're not interested. Tell him we're happily married. Tell him anything. The merger cannot fail. Yuna stared at him. Fix what? I didn't do anything. I sat there like you told me to. He's clearly infatuated. And whose fault is that? Maybe if you'd actually acted like you were married to me, he wouldn't think I was available. We're not really married. No? I'm wearing your grandmother's ring. I live in your house. I attend your meetings. The only thing we're not doing is the actual marriage part. This is a contract, Yuna. Then honor it. Tell him I'm your wife and mean it. Tell him you're happily married, Jiwoo insisted. Are we? Yuna heard herself ask and hated how much the question hurt. Are we happily married, Jiwoo? Because I've received more attention from my mail carrier than from you. At least he asks how my day was. For the first time since she'd met him, Jiwoo looked uncertain. Outside, raised voices. Marco was singing something in Italian. Don Valentino was apologizing. The merger was crumbling. And Yuna's fake marriage was about to become very, very real. The flowers started arriving the next morning. Yuna found them outside the penthouse door, a massive arrangement of roses, lilies, and orchids that required both hands to carry. The card read, Roses are red, violets are blue. I would fight a bear just to have coffee with you. Your devoted Marco. The poetry is terrible, Mina said over the phone, though Yuna could hear her trying not to laugh. It's sweet. It's a disaster. Yuna, this man just declared his intentions in front of a room full of lawyers and board members. The tabloids are going to eat this alive. Mina was, unfortunately, correct. By day 3, the headlines had started. Billionaire love triangle. Ice King's marriage melts. Italian heir steals CEO's wife. Jiwoo's cousin Taejun gave an interview suggesting the marriage had always been suspicious. They never even had an engagement party, he told reporters, his smile sharp. What kind of couple doesn't celebrate their love? The kind with a contract instead of feelings, Yuna thought. Marco, meanwhile, was relentless in the most wholesome way possible. He found Yuna's favorite coffee shop, she still didn't know how, and was waiting at her usual corner table with homemade tiramisu in an expensive-looking container. I made this at 3 a.m., he announced proudly. I could not sleep for thinking of your smile, so I baked. This is what love does. It makes you bake. The tiramisu was, annoyingly, the best thing Yuna had ever tasted. Mr. Valentino. Marco, please. Mr. Valentino is my father, who is very disappointed in me right now, but also secretly proud because Valentinos follow their hearts. Marco, I'm married. To a man who treats you like furniture. Beautiful, expensive furniture, yes, but still furniture. You deserve to be treated like the masterpiece you are. It was absurd. It was over the top. It was also the most attention anyone had paid to Yuna's feelings in months. Then there was the grocery store incident. Yuna was examining tomatoes when she felt a presence on either side of her. Marco appeared on her left, Jiwoo materialized on her right, and both men grabbed tomatoes like they were selecting weapons. These tomatoes, Marco announced, holding his up to the light, are ripe and full of passion, like a good relationship should be. Jiwoo selected his own tomato with clinical precision. This one is firm and practical. It won't spoil quickly or create unnecessary drama. Your tomato has no soul. Your tomato will be rotten by Thursday. They were arguing about produce. Grown men, billionaires, fighting over tomatoes. Yuna bought cucumbers and left. But the worst, or best, she couldn't decide, was Jiwoo's attempts at suddenly being a husband. She found him Googling how to romance wife at 3 a.m., his face illuminated by his laptop screen, looking more stressed than she'd ever seen him during business negotiations. He bought her a top-of-the-line vacuum cleaner. It has 17 attachments, he explained seriously, like he was presenting a merger proposal. The article said women appreciate practical gifts that make their lives easier. Jiwoo, we have a cleaning service. Oh, pause. Should I return it? The cooking attempt was even more disastrous. Yuna woke to smoke alarms and found Jiwoo in the kitchen, surrounded by what might have once been eggs, the fire alarm shrieking, a burning pan smoking in the sink. I was making breakfast, he said over the noise, and if Yuna wasn't mistaken, he looked embarrassed. The instructions said easy. Instructions? From YouTube. Simple breakfast your wife will love. There were 5 million views. I assumed it was reliable data. Then there was the compliment incident. They were getting ready for another merger meeting, round two, with Marco still declaring his devotion and Don Valentino looking increasingly amused by the whole situation. Your hair is... Jiwoo paused, clearly working hard, very attached to your head today. Yuna stared at him in the mirror. What? It looks nice, very firmly rooted, good follicle strength. Did you just compliment my follicles? The tutorial said to notice details. I noticed. Your hair is successfully remaining on your head. Despite everything, the absurdity, the stress, the tabloid photos, Yuna laughed. Really laughed, for the first time in weeks. And Jiwoo almost smiled. Husband trials, Yuna announced that evening, after Marco had sent her his third declaration of love via singing telegram. Both of you. Both of who? Jiwoo asked. You and Marco. If you're both so determined to prove something, prove it. Make me laugh. Cook me dinner. Tell me one real thing about yourselves that isn't about business or family obligation. Marco showed up with a 3-course Italian meal and stories about his Korean grandmother, who'd fallen in love with his grandfather during a trip to Rome and taught him that love at first sight was real because it had happened to them. Jiwoo arrived with takeout he'd carefully researched, 2 hours of data on top-rated romantic restaurants, and an admission that he'd never actually learned to cook because his parents died when he was young. And after that, there was only business. I don't know how to be a person, he said quietly, and Yuna's heart cracked a little. Just a CEO. Then Minwoo appeared. Yuna's ex showed up at the penthouse with flowers and apologies, having read the tabloids and decided that a fake marriage meant she was available. I made a mistake, Minwoo said. You were always the one. That other woman, she was a phase. You're forever. You ordered her online. And I regret it. Come back to me. We were good together. 3 men. 1 month ago, Yuna had been alone. Now she had 3 men competing for her attention, and she didn't know which felt more surreal. Marco's passionate devotion, Jiwoo's awkward attempts at humanity, or Minwoo's convenient timing. But late at night, when she heard Jiwoo in his study, staying up to research more ways to be a better fake husband, Yuna realized something terrifying. She was starting to have real feelings for her contract spouse. And feelings were the one thing the contract explicitly forbade. Yuna found him at 2 in the morning, surrounded by ghosts. She'd been unable to sleep again and had wandered the penthouse looking for something she couldn't name. Water? Maybe. Or answers. The study door was cracked open, warm light spilling into the dark hallway, and through the gap she could see Jiwoo sitting on the floor, not at his desk where he usually worked until dawn. On the floor, in his expensive pajama pants and a t-shirt she'd never seen him wear, surrounded by boxes. Jiwoo? He looked up, and for a moment he seemed surprised to see her, like he'd forgotten they lived in the same house. Then his eyes went to what she was wearing, one of his old university hoodies she'd stolen from the back of a closet, and something flickered across his face too fast to read. I couldn't sleep, she said, which felt like admitting something. Neither could I. He gestured to the boxes around him. My grandmother's things. I've been putting off going through them. Yuna sat down across from him, the boxes between them like a barrier. Inside were photographs, jewelry, handwritten recipes in Korean, a silk scarf that still smelled like jasmine perfume. She raised you? After my parents died. Car accident. I was 12. His voice was flat, reciting facts. She taught me everything. How to run the company, how to survive board meetings, how to... He paused. How to not need anyone. She sounds formidable. She was. She was also stubborn, manipulative, and apparently enjoyed orchestrating my life from beyond the grave. He pulled out an envelope, cream-colored and sealed with red wax. This was at the bottom. It's addressed to both of us. Yuna's breath caught. To my grandson and his bride was written in elegant hangul across the front. Should we? I don't know if I want to. Jiwoo turned the envelope over in his hands. What if it makes everything worse? How could it be worse than 3 men fighting over tomatoes? That surprised a sound out of him. Not quite a laugh, but close. He broke the seal. The letter was 2 pages, handwritten in careful script. Jiwoo read it first, his expression shifting from confusion to shock to something that might have been anger or grief or both. She chose you, he said finally. Specifically, She investigated your agency 6 months before she died. She knew exactly who you were. Yuna's heart was pounding. What? He handed her the letter. Grandmother Han's voice came through clearly in every line. My dear grandson, if you're reading this, you followed my instructions and found yourself a wife. But not just any wife. This particular girl. Kang Yuna, who understands contracts but has forgotten about love, who builds walls around her heart and calls it a business plan. You're so alike, you and this girl. Both of you hiding from the world, pretending you don't need anyone, turning everything into transactions because transactions are safe. She needs someone to teach her about real love. You need someone to teach you about being human. Perfect match if you'd stop being stubborn long enough to see it. I'm manipulating you, yes, but I'm also giving you a chance you wouldn't take yourselves. Don't waste it, Jiwoo. Don't end up like me, alone at the end, surrounded by money and regrets. Love is not a contract. It's a risk. Take it. Your grandmother, who loves you enough to meddle forever. Yuna read it twice, her hands shaking. She played us. She manipulated us from beyond the grave. Jiwoo's voice was tight. Or, Yuna said softly, she gave us a chance we wouldn't have taken ourselves. Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything they'd been avoiding for 6 weeks. I don't know how to be human anymore, Jiwoo finally said. After my parents died, after grandmother taught me to be a CEO, I forgot how to be anything else. I look at normal people, people who laugh, who cry, who feel things, and it's like watching a species I used to belong to but can't remember how to rejoin. Is that why you collect fountain pens? He looked surprised. How did you? I see you with them. Late at night. You're so gentle with them. It's the only time you look like you're feeling something. They're beautiful and functional. They have clear purpose. They don't require emotional investment, but they reward care. He paused. I suppose that's pathetic. It's sad, Yuna said honestly. You deserve more than fountain pens, Jiwoo. Do I? I'm not sure I remember how to want more. Yuna found herself moving around the boxes, sitting beside him instead of across from him. Close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes, the vulnerability he never showed during daylight. My ex left me for someone he ordered online, she said. Did you know that? Not just another woman, a literal mail-order bride. He filled out a form, paid a fee, and found someone more convenient than me. That's humiliating? Yes, but also clarifying. If love can be replaced by a catalog purchase, then maybe love is just another transaction. Maybe there's no difference between I love you and this contract is beneficial, so I built a business proving exactly that. But you don't believe it. I did. I do. Yuna stopped. I don't know anymore. These past weeks, watching you Google romantic tutorials and burn breakfast and attempt to compliment my follicles, it's been ridiculous. But also, human? Yeah. They sat in silence, surrounded by a dead woman's belongings and the weight of everything they weren't saying. Jiwoo's hand was inches from hers on the carpet. She could feel the warmth of him, smell his soap, something clean and expensive and utterly him. Yuna, her phone buzzed. They both jumped like guilty teenagers. Marco's text lit up the screen. Cannot sleep. Thinking of your smile. Is this what insomnia feels like? I have made another tiramisu. This is becoming a problem. The spell broke. Jiwoo pulled back, walls slamming into place so fast Yuna could almost hear them. You should answer him, he said, standing up. It's late. Jiwoo? Good night, Yuna. She sat alone among his grandmother's things, holding a letter about love from a dead woman who understood them better than they understood themselves. The next morning, Yuna found Marco at the coffee shop. He looked tired but lit up when he saw her, like she'd personally switched on the sun. Why are you really doing this? She asked, sitting down without preamble. His smile faltered. I told you. No poetry, no metaphors. The truth, Marco. He was quiet for a long moment, stirring his espresso. My grandmother was Korean. Did you know this? She met my grandfather in Rome when she was 23, visiting on holiday. He saw her in a museum, and he said time stopped. Just stopped. They were married 3 months later. That's a nice story, but she told me about it my whole life, about love at first sight, about knowing instantly that someone is your person. And then she got sick. Cancer. I watched my grandfather, this strong, proud Italian man. I watched him break. He held her hand every day for 6 months. He sang to her. He read her poetry. And when she died, he stood at her grave and said, "Worth it, every moment. I would do it all again for just one more day." Marco's eyes were wet. That is love, Yuna. Not convenient, not comfortable, but real. And when I saw you sitting in that boardroom looking so beautiful and so sad, yes, sad, I could see it, I thought, my grandmother would want me to fight for this, to fight for love, the way my grandfather fought to keep her smiling. I'm married, Marco, to a man who keeps you frozen. I don't want to steal you. I want to set you free. And that was the problem, wasn't it? Marco was sincere. Heartbreakingly, impossibly sincere. Meanwhile, across the city, Jiwoo sat in his office, pressing his palm to his chest, convinced something was medically wrong. The pain had started yesterday, watching Yuna laugh at something Marco said. Sharp and hot and entirely unfamiliar. "Sir," his assistant said carefully, "I think you're jealous." "Impossible. I don't experience inferior emotions like jealousy." "Then why have you been staring at Mr. Valentino's building for 45 minutes?" Jiwoo looked down. The reports on his desk were unread. The coffee was cold. And Marco Valentino's smiling face was still visible through the window across the street, probably composing more terrible poetry. "I need a cardiologist," Jiwoo said. "Sir, you need your wife." The headline hit at dawn: Ice King's fake marriage exposed. Yuna saw it on her phone before she was fully awake. Photos of the penthouse, somehow taken through windows, showing two separate bedrooms, her clothes in one, Jiwoo's in another. Architectural plans clearly marking master suite and guest wing. And worse, much worse, a partial scan of what looked like their contract. Key phrases highlighted: no physical contact, no emotional attachment, payment upon completion. Jiwoo's cousin Taejun gave a statement by 8 a.m. "I always knew something was wrong. My cousin doesn't do love, he does hostile takeovers. This marriage was just another acquisition." By 9, the Han Industries board had called an emergency meeting. By 10, Don Valentino's lawyers had sent a formal letter: merger discussions suspended pending resolution of the current instability. By noon, Yuna was trapped in the penthouse by reporters camped outside the building. "Mrs. Han, is your marriage real? Did you marry for money? Is it true you're leaving your husband for Marco Valentino?" Jiwoo came home early, something he never did, and found her sitting on the floor by the door, knees pulled to her chest, trying not to cry. "Pack your things," he said, and his voice was ice again. Pure ice. The warmth from last night might never have existed. "My driver will take you to a hotel, somewhere private. You'll be safe there." "Jiwoo? This was always just business, Yuna. I shouldn't have forgotten that. Neither should you." The words hit like physical blows. "You don't mean that." "Don't I? We signed a contract. The contract has been compromised. It's time to cut losses and move forward separately." "What about your grandmother's letter? What about—" "My grandmother was a romantic who died alone. Perhaps she wasn't the best source of advice." Yuna stood, and she was shaking. "Finally, you're being honest. This is easier, isn't it? Pushing me away. You're so good at it. You've had years of practice." Something cracked in his expression, but he didn't argue. She packed in 20 minutes. Everything she'd brought, everything that was truly hers, which wasn't much. The designer clothes stayed, the jewelry stayed. Only her real things came with her. The hotel was expensive and anonymous. Marco found her anyway. "I saw the news," he said, standing in her doorway with takeout and tissues and genuine concern radiating from him like heat. "I am so sorry. This is my fault." "It's not. It is. I pushed, I declared. I made everything public when it should have been private." He set the food down. "But Yuna, I meant it. Leave him. Not for me, if you don't want me, but for yourself. You deserve to be chosen, truly chosen, not because of a contract or a will or a business deal." "Marco, I'm flying back to Italy next week. Come with me. Start over. No press, no contracts, just life." He left before she could answer, and Yuna was grateful because she didn't know what she would have said. Mina arrived an hour later, taking one look at Yuna's face and pulling her into a hug. "The business is tanking," Mina said gently. 3 clients canceled this morning. They don't want to be associated with the fake marriage scandal. Yuna, I'm so sorry." "It's fine. We'll recover." "That's not what I'm sorry about." Mina pulled back, holding Yuna's shoulders. "I'm sorry because you're in love with him. The real him. And he's too broken to see what he has." "I'm not." "Don't. Not with me. You love him. Burnt breakfast, terrible compliments, fountain pen obsession and all. Yuna couldn't deny it anymore. The tears came, and Mina held her while she broke. Across the city, Jiwoo sat in the dark penthouse, grandmother's letter in one hand, divorce papers in the other. The board had been clear: fix this or lose everything. The merger was dead, his reputation was damaged, and the house felt emptier than it ever had, even though Yuna had only lived there 6 weeks. Sir, his assistant said from the doorway, there's still time. Fight for her. I don't know how to fight for someone, only against them. Then learn. But Jiwoo just sat there, surrounded by fountain pens that suddenly seemed like the saddest things in the world. Minwoo showed up at Yuna's hotel that evening, somehow having found her despite her attempts at privacy. I heard about everything, he said, and I have a proposal. Marry me. For real this time. We'll do a press conference, say we reunited, say the Han thing was a mistake. Your reputation gets salvaged, my parents stop bothering me about grandchildren, everyone wins. Minwoo, I don't love you. Do you love him? The Ice King who treated you like furniture? The question hung in the air. Did she? Could you love someone who'd kept you at arm's length, who'd communicated in sticky notes, who'd only started trying when someone else wanted what he'd never valued? Yes, apparently. You could. I need to think, Yuna said. That night, 3 people sat in 3 different locations, having reached 3 different kinds of rock bottom. Yuna in a hotel room, staring at a torn contract and Marco's plane tickets to Italy. Jiwoo in an empty penthouse, holding his grandmother's letter and divorce papers, trying to remember how to feel anything other than empty. Marco, in his suite, writing a letter about love and sacrifice and knowing when to let go. Something had to change. Someone had to be brave enough to risk everything. The question was, who would move first? The room service shrimp had been a mistake. Yuna realized this around midnight when her stomach staged a full revolt. By 1 a.m., she was on the bathroom floor, too sick to be embarrassed, calling Mina in desperation. I'm dying, she groaned. Tell my business I'm sorry. Tell Marco I couldn't go to Italy anyway. Tell Jiwoo. I'm calling them both, Mina said, already dialing. Don't you dare. But Mina had already hung up. Marco arrived first, 17 minutes later, still in pajamas with a cashmere coat thrown over them, carrying a pharmacy's worth of medicine and a thermos of something that smelled like heaven. Amore, I am here. He found her curled on the bathroom floor and didn't even flinch. My Nana's remedy, ginger, honey, magic. You will drink this and feel better, or I will fight your illness personally. Marco, you don't have to. Shh, no talking, only healing. Jiwoo arrived 12 minutes after that, and he'd brought reinforcements. The hotel room door burst open to reveal not just Jiwoo, but 3 doctors in white coats, 2 nurses, and several men wheeling what appeared to be a portable hospital bed. What, Marco said slowly, is happening? Medical attention, Jiwoo said, his face pale, his eyes wild with something that might have been panicking. She said she was dying. Where is she? Is she breathing? I brought a cardiologist, a gastroenterologist, and someone who specializes in food poisoning, Marco finished. She has food poisoning from bad shrimp. She does not need a hospital wing in her hotel room. How do you know it's just food poisoning? It could be because I asked her before calling 17 specialists. The doctors looked at each other. One of them cleared his throat. Sir, if it's just food poisoning, we should probably stay, Jiwoo ordered, until we're certain. What followed was the strangest night of Yuna's life. The doctors confirmed food poisoning, prescribed rest and fluids, and left looking confused but well compensated. The hospital bed stayed, because apparently, once Jiwoo had it installed, he wasn't letting it go to waste. Marco had taken up residence on her left, monitoring her temperature and offering sips of his grandmother's remedy. Jiwoo had claimed her right, holding a tablet with WebMD pulled up, cross-referencing every symptom. She needs water, Marco said. I'm getting water. You are reading about water. I am getting water. Your water might not be the right temperature. It is water, not espresso. Both of you, Yuna croaked from the bed, shut up. I'm trying to die in peace. You're not dying, they said in unison, then glared at each other. But as the night wore on, something shifted. The bickering became coordination. Marco would say, hold her head, and Jiwoo would do it. Jiwoo would say she needs another blanket, and Marco would grab one. They moved around each other like dancers learning choreography, united by a common goal, keeping Yuna comfortable. Around 3 a.m., delirious with fever and exhaustion, Yuna started mumbling. Why can't I just love someone normal? She whispered, eyes closed, not fully aware she was speaking aloud. Someone who doesn't collect fountain pens or make tiramisu at dawn or Google symptoms like their stock reports. Why did it have to be complicated? Both men froze. They exchanged a look across the bed, a long, weighted look that carried an entire conversation without words. I'll get more ice, Marco said quietly, standing. Jiwoo followed him to the small kitchen area. Neither spoke for a long moment. You love her, Marco finally said. It wasn't a question. Jiwoo stared at the ice bucket like it held answers. I don't know how to love people. I only know how to fail them. Then learn. Love is not perfection, it's trying. And you are trying, my friend. Badly, yes, but trying. Why are you helping me? Jiwoo turned to face him. You said you wanted her. You could have her. I've destroyed everything. The contract, her trust, her reputation. You're offering her Italy and fresh starts. I'm offering her what? Burnt pancakes and a man who thinks emotions are software bugs. Marco smiled sadly. Because at 2 a.m., when she was half asleep and the fever was breaking, she whispered your name, not mine. Jiwoo, she said. Jiwoo, don't go. And I realized she has already chosen. She just needs you to choose her back. Jiwoo's hands were shaking. What if I can't be what she needs? What if you can? You installed a hospital bed in a hotel room. You brought 3 doctors for food poisoning. You are capable of grand gestures. You just need to make them about love instead of fear. They returned to find Yuna sleeping peacefully, her breathing steady, fever finally broken. You take the first watch, Marco said. I will sleep here. He gestured to the couch. Just in case. You don't have to stay. I know, but she is important, and anyone important to her is. Marco paused, considering. Well, they need backup, even from their competition. Dawn came slowly, painting the hotel room in shades of pink and gold. Yuna's eyes opened to find 2 men asleep in chairs by her bed. Marco sprawled comfortably, snoring softly, and Jiwoo upright and rigid even in sleep, his hands stretched out toward the bed like he'd been reaching for her. Her heart made its choice at that moment. Had probably made it weeks ago, if she was honest. Somewhere between sticky notes and burnt breakfasts, between terrible compliments and 3 a.m. Google searches, she'd fallen in love with a man who was learning to be human for her. Marco was wonderful, kind and passionate and whole. But Jiwoo was hers. Broken and trying and so scared of feelings, he'd convinced himself they were a medical condition. She needed to fight for him, for them, for the possibility her grandmother-in-law had seen before either of them had. By the time both men woke, Yuna had made her decision. I'm calling a press conference, she announced. Marco sat up, instantly alert. Are you well enough for the Valentine's Day gala, tonight? She looked at Jiwoo, who was watching her with careful, guarded eyes. I'm going to tell the truth, all of it. And then, she took a breath, then I'm going to ask my husband if he wants to stay married to me. For real this time. Jiwoo's expression did something complicated. Yuna, I know you're scared. I know you think you'll fail. But Jiwoo, you already succeeded. You made me believe in love again, and I built my entire business on not believing in it. So tonight, in front of everyone, I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel, and you can decide what you want to do about it. Marco stood, walked over, and kissed her forehead gently. Brava, he whispered. This is how it should be. Brave and honest and true. You're okay with this? Yuna asked. My heart is broken, Marco admitted cheerfully, but also proud. You choose love. That is what my Nana would want. He headed for the door, then paused. But Jiwoo, if you break her heart, I have many cousins. Some have boats. Just remember this. After he left, Yuna and Jiwoo sat in silence. You don't have to do this, Jiwoo finally said. I know. I want to. The question is, do you want to show up? He stood, walked to the window, looked out at Seoul waking up. When he turned back, something had shifted in his face. The walls weren't gone, but they had cracks. I've never been so terrified in my life, he said, but yes, I'll show up. The Valentine's Day gala was exactly as Yuna remembered from 6 weeks ago. Crystal chandeliers, red roses, Seoul's elite dressed to impress. Except this time, every eye was on her the moment she entered in an emerald gown, and the whispers followed her like a wave. That's her, the fake wife. I heard she's leaving him for the Italian. Jiwoo was already there, standing with the board members, looking like he'd aged a year in the past week. Their eyes met across the room, and Yuna felt her courage waver. Then she remembered. Grandmother Han had believed in them. Marco had believed in them. It was time they believed in themselves. Marco took the stage first, microphone in hand, and the room went silent. Everyone expected a dramatic declaration, probably in Italian, definitely with crying. Friends, Marco began, his smile gentle. I know what you expect. The passionate Italian confessing his love, stealing the beautiful wife, causing an international incident. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. But I learned something these past weeks. Love is not about taking. It is about wanting someone's happiness, even if that happiness is not with you. He found Jiwoo in the crowd. Jiwoo, you are like uncooked pasta, stiff and hard, breaking under pressure. But Yuna, she is the boiling water that makes you soft and delicious. I have watched you become al dente because of her. And this. He pressed his hand to his heart. This is beautiful. The crowd was confused. Someone whispered, did he just compare them to pasta? So I step aside, not because I do not love her. I do. I will probably love her a little bit forever, but because she does not love me. She loves him. And he, though he is too frightened to say it, loves her. Marco bowed, started to walk off stage, but paused by Yuna. If he ever treats you badly, he whispered, I have a cousin with a boat. You call me. Then Yuna was walking to the stage, and it felt like moving through water, everything slow and surreal. She took the microphone, her hands shaking. I'm Kang Yuna, she began, and her voice echoed through the ballroom. And 6 weeks ago, I married Han Jiwoo for money. Gasps, cameras flashing. Jiwoo's board members looked like they might faint. The tabloids are right. It was a contract, no feelings, no emotions, just a business transaction. I run an agency that specializes in professional relationships, and this was supposed to be my biggest payday. She found Jiwoo in the crowd. He was pale but standing. But somewhere between the sticky notes and the burnt breakfasts, between the vacuum cleaner gift and the compliment about my follicles, I fell in love with my husband. The room erupted in whispers. Yuna pushed through. Han Jiwoo is the most emotionally constipated man I have ever met. He Googles romantic advice at 3 a.m. He thinks jealousy is a cardiac condition. He once told me my hair was successfully attached to my head. People were laughing now. But he also stayed up all night researching how to make me smile. He brought 17 doctors when I had food poisoning. He's terrible at being human, but he's trying. For me. She looked directly at him. So here's my question, Jiwoo. Was it just business for you? The ballroom went silent. 1,000 people holding their breath. Jiwoo stood. I started walking toward the stage. Every eye followed him. He climbed the stairs, took the microphone from Yuna's shaking hands, looked out at the crowd, his board, his colleagues, his competitors, the press who'd torn them apart. I don't know how to do this, he said, and his voice was rough. I'm terrible at feelings, at romance, at being the kind of husband Yuna deserves. But I know I want to learn. With you. For real this time. He turned to Yuna. No contract. No terms. Just, he paused, something like panic crossing his face. Unless you want a contract, I could have my lawyers draft something. Wait, that's not romantic. Yuna kissed him, their first real kiss in front of 1,000 people, cameras flashing and crowd erupting. His arms came around her waist, her hands tangled in his hair. And for the first time since she'd met him, Han Jiwoo looked truly, completely alive. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Jiwoo rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he whispered. I don't know how to do it right, but I love you. Then we'll learn together. The ballroom exploded in applause. Marco was crying openly, looking proud. Don Valentino was clapping. Even the board members looked relieved. The merger? Someone shouted. Is approved, Don Valentino announced, standing. The Valentinos invest in love, and this is a very good investment. Jiwoo turned back to the microphone, Yuna tucked against his side. To be clear, he said, and there was the hint of a smile, an actual smile, on his face. I'm still terrible at romance. I will probably buy more inappropriate gifts. I will definitely Google more advice, but I'm not giving up. Good, Yuna said, taking the mic, because I'm not returning you. The refund policy expired. The crowd laughed. Someone started clapping. It spread through the ballroom like wildfire. Applause for the most awkward, honest, accidentally perfect love confession Seoul had ever witnessed. Later, much later, after the press conference and the celebration and Marco's tearful goodbye hug, "You take care of her, or I come back with my cousins." Yuna and Jiwoo stood on the penthouse balcony, looking at the city. "I destroyed your business reputation," Jiwoo said quietly. "We'll rebuild. Together this time. I'm going to be bad at this, at being a real husband. Probably. But you're good at trying. I'll try to be perfect any day." He pulled her close, and for the first time it felt right. Not contractual. Not obligatory. Just real. "For the record," Jiwoo said, "I'm keeping the hospital bed, just in case." Yuna laughed into his chest. "You're ridiculous." "I know, but I'm yours." And really, that was all the contract they needed. 6 months later, the merger announcement made the front page of every business publication in Asia. Han Industries and Valentino Hospitality Group complete historic partnership. Stock prices soar. What the headlines didn't mention was that the signing ceremony had been delayed by 20 minutes because Marco insisted on taking a selfie with Jiwoo, who'd looked confused by the concept of selfies until Yuna showed him how to smile at a camera phone. "You still look like you're about to fire someone," Marco had said, examining the photo. "That's my happy face." "Terrifying. I love it. We frame this, yes?" And somehow, impossibly, they had become friends. Real friends. The kind who texted each other memes that Jiwoo didn't understand, but saved anyway. The kind who argued about restaurants and sports teams and whether tiramisu was better than Korean desserts. It wasn't, but Jiwoo let Marco believe otherwise. Marco had found his own happy ending with Sora, Jiwoo's event planner, a woman with enough chaotic energy to match his passion and enough organizational skills to keep him from making tiramisu at 2 a.m. Their first date had lasted 14 hours and included an impromptu trip to 3 different museums and a cooking class neither of them had signed up for. "She is like espresso and fireworks," Marco had told Yuna, dreamy-eyed. "I am exhausted and exhilarated. It is perfect." The 4 of them met for dinner once a month, double dates that usually ended with Marco and Sora telling increasingly elaborate stories while Jiwoo tried to follow along and Yuna translated the chaos into something her husband could process. "Wait," Jiwoo had said at the last dinner, "you adopted a 3-legged cat named Chairman Meow because he reminded you of your uncle?" "Nano Giovanni, yes. The resemblance is uncanny. I don't understand anything happening right now." Yuna had squeezed his hand under the table. "That's okay. Neither do I half the time." "But you're smiling?" "So are you." And he was. Actually smiling, not the corporate quarter smile he used for board meetings, but a real one that made his eyes crinkle and made Yuna fall in love with him all over again. Yuna's business had transformed too. Rent a Spouse was now Real Love Consulting, still helping people navigate relationships, but with a new focus on authenticity. She taught people how to be vulnerable, how to communicate, how to build real connections instead of performative ones. "I help people unlearn everything my old business taught them," she'd explained to a journalist. "Turns out love isn't a transaction. It's a terrible, wonderful risk. And it's worth it." Her first client under the new model had been Jiwoo's assistant, who'd been in love with the woman at the coffee shop for 2 years, but didn't know how to talk to her. "Just be honest," Yuna had advised. "Tell her exactly how you feel. The worst she can say is no." "What if I'm not good at feelings? Neither is my husband. He once told me my hair was attached to my head, but he tried, and that's what mattered." The assistant was now engaged. The coffee shop woman apparently found awkward honesty refreshing. Jiwoo, for his part, had mastered exactly one domestic skill: heart-shaped pancakes. They were always burned. Always. He'd tried different pans, different temperatures, different recipes. Yuna suspected he had a folder on his computer titled Pancake Research, with peer-reviewed articles about optimal cooking conditions. They were still burned every time, but every Saturday morning he made them anyway. This particular Saturday, Yuna woke to find a yellow sticky note on the refrigerator because some habits were too precious to break. "Good morning. Your hair looks nice. Jae." She laughed, grabbed a pen and wrote back on a pink note, "Thanks. Yours is also attached to your head." She heard him before she saw him. The smoke alarm's brief beep, he'd gotten faster at catching them before they fully activated, followed by the window opening, followed by Jiwoo's muttered commentary that probably included words like thermal conductivity and Maillard reaction failure. He emerged from the kitchen carrying a plate of heart-shaped pancakes that were, as always, various shades of too dark. But his smile was proud, and he was wearing the apron Sora had given him that said, "Kiss the cook, at your own risk." "Breakfast is served," he announced formally, like he was presenting a business proposal. Yuna took the plate, examined the burned pancakes with exaggerated seriousness. "They're perfect. You're a terrible liar. I learned from the best." She cut into one, and it was exactly as burned as she'd expected. "Remember when you told everyone we were happily married when we'd been strangers for 6 weeks? That wasn't a lie." Jiwoo sat across from her at their kitchen table, the same table where they'd once communicated only through sticky notes. "Just early truth. I was happily married. I just didn't know it yet." "That's very poetic for someone who thinks emotions are software bugs." "I've been reading poetry. Marco sends me recommendations. I don't understand most of it, but there was one line: 'Love is the bridge between you and everything.' I think I'm starting to understand what that means." Yuna reached across the table, took his hand. His fountain pen collection was visible through the study doorway, but he hadn't spent a late night organizing them in months. He had better things to do with his evenings now. "The pancakes really are perfect, she said softly. "Not because they're well cooked, because you made them. For me. Every Saturday, even though you're terrible at it. I could hire a chef." "Don't you dare. I like your terrible pancakes. They taste like trying." They ate burned pancakes together as Sol woke up outside their windows. Somewhere across the city, Marco was probably making elaborate breakfast for Sora. Somewhere, Mina was opening real love consulting for the day. Somewhere, Grandmother Han's spirit was probably smiling, satisfied with her matchmaking from beyond the grave. "I love you," Jiwoo said suddenly, like the words still surprised him. "I probably don't say it enough. I'm working on that. There's a TED Talk about expressing emotions that I've watched 3 times." Yuna kissed him, tasting burned pancakes in early morning and the sweet awkwardness of a man learning to be human. "I love you too," she said. "Terrible pancakes, follicle compliments, and all." Later, they'd go visit Marco and Sora. Later, there would be work and meetings and the normal chaos of life. Later, Jiwoo would probably Google something about romantic gestures and end up buying her something wildly inappropriate that she'd love anyway. But right now, in this moment, they just sat together in the morning light, eating burned pancakes and laughing at nothing, and everything was exactly as it should be. The frame froze on their laughter. Yuna's head thrown back, Jiwoo's rare, genuine smile, breakfast dishes scattered between them, sticky notes decorating their refrigerator like love letters in shorthand. Voiceover, warm and knowing. Sometimes the best love stories don't start with love at all. They start with contracts and sticky notes and desperate grandmother's wills. They start with burnt breakfasts and terrible compliments and a man who thinks jealousy is a medical condition requiring urgent care. They start with honesty, painful, awkward, completely human honesty. With patience, the kind that waits while someone learns to defrost their frozen heart. With someone willing to become soft for you, even when being soft feels like the scariest thing in the world. And sometimes, just sometimes, it takes an Italian man with too many feelings and a gift for terrible poetry to show 2 people what they could become if they just stop being afraid. Love isn't a transaction. It's not a contract or a business deal or something you can optimize with spreadsheets and research. It's burned pancakes on Saturday mornings. It's learning someone's language, even if that language is color-coded sticky notes. It's choosing someone every day, even when choosing is scary. It's knowing that sometimes the best things in life come with no guarantees, no terms and conditions, no $500,000 payout. Just 2 people, trying their best, making it up as they go. And really, that's the only contract worth signing.